right. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the February meeting of the Athens in Motion Commission to implement the Bike and Pedestrian Master Plan. I'm going to share our agenda for today. I think WebEx did some updating because now I have to give my computer permission to share. Screen. Just let me. All right, I'm going to have to quit and reopen WebEx. Be right back.
You need to pull something up.
I will be back in just a moment. Yeah, I think WebEx just did an update. That's all. I mean, this is just the world we live in.
It's a pain in the neck.
Nurse's chair.
We're back. It's broken.
Need to bring the WD forward.
Something. Better.
Better. Finally, this is our agenda. Thank you for your patience. We'll do roll call. I am here. Art,
Here.
Teresa,
Here.
Randy,
Here.
Alan,
Here.
Ed,
Here.
Julie, here, Greg.
Here.
Blaine is going to be late. We have a quorum. Great. Any public comments, Daniel?
No. There was a comment about last month's meeting stream. It is not available. Basically, there is some confusion. There was a couple different links to use. This is why I don't gamble. I picked the wrong one. 50-50 chance. So on our last meeting, which was available to the public if they had showed up, but was not available to the public on YouTube, and there's no way to recover that. So
Can I say something? Did you all see an email from Carol Myers about adding something to the AIM plan?
oh yes.
We don't have an agenda item about that.
Okay. So I just wanted to make sure that we all saw it.
The short version is that I already added it as one of the future projects. We still have to finalize that list with you guys through the revision committee, but we're just kind of holding until we get the consultant on board. So
Didn't want it to fall through the cracks.
no, it was a good catch, and I was like, oh, good, I already did that. So plus a few other streets that are going to be added in the AIM plan.
Presumably Carol sent that to the officers of the commission.
I think she sent it to the two of us and Daniel.
Okay. I didn't see it.
The one
I
that
don't see it, it's okay.
came to us through, I had our chain of command, I think, assistant director, Ronnie and Stephen were on there. So I don't know if y'all got a different one, but.
I don't think it went to the whole AIM distribution list.
Right, yeah. Okay. And here are our minutes from last month. Any additions, corrections to these?
But they look good. I move that we accept the minutes.
All right, we have a
Second.
second from Randy. So that's first from Teresa, second from Randy. All those in favor, please say aye.
I
Any opposed? And I also need to. Actually, I need to approve our agenda. So Real quick, we will be welcoming Katie, talking a little bit about May courts. The big items for today are from policy and projects. Randy about criteria regarding sidewalk gaps as part of small programs. We have some of our small budget to allocate for the remainder of the fiscal year. And I've asked Daniel to give us a version of the local roadway safety plan presentation that him and Tim Griffith from Traffic Engineering gave to the Mayor and Commission, which the Mayor and Commission will vote on in March. So I thought that there's some great stuff in there, and I thought you all would like to hear what has come out of staff's work on that, because that has been a long time coming. And then we'll have staff updates as we have time. So any changes to the agenda? I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Okay, first from Art, second from Julie. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Unanimous, I'm trying to say the names because Blaine's probably going to look at the video later and have to record the official record. Okay. First up, I am thrilled to welcome our new Vision Zero coordinator, Katie Goodrum. Katie, welcome. Would you like to say just a few words about yourself or what, you're excited about? I'll stop sharing my screen.
Sure. Well, I started February 5th, and previously I was working as a consultant as a comprehensive planner, so transportation and also land use, housing, environment kind of thing. And I'm from Athens, and I'm passionate about making it a safer place to get around. And excited to finally learn all the things about transportation, funding, and projects and the nuts and bolts that I'm trying to get into my head for a while, or avoiding getting into my head. But yeah, looking forward to seeing more about what you're all doing.
And Katie has served many years on the Planning Commission. So understands that side of things and land use and the intersection of how we're getting from one place to another and what that means and what that looks like. And in context, I think you're going to be able to provide that. And that's a wonderful thing to have. So we're thrilled to have you.
Thanks. I'm
Okay.
happy to be working with you.
Yeah, and Katie actually came to one of our first Athens in Motion meetings ever. I think that's where I met you. And has served on T-SPLOST. So understands the funding, a lot of the funding mechanisms and everything else. So yes, excited to have you.
Had you been working for ACC Gov before that?
Never. Just as a planning
So
commission.
a new hire. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Welcome, Katie. And then next, I wanted to talk a little bit, or have Daniel talk about the May Courts 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan and give us some context on that, because this is not necessarily just like something that Athens in Motion is involved with. This is out to the general public, but I don't know if I've been aware of it before. Daniel, is this the kind of thing that we just contribute to as individuals? Like, what do you think? And
Yeah.
And May Courts is just advisory to GDOT, right? And helps them with their long range, or it comes up with the long range planning, transportation planning, big projects.
Well, so Maycourts is a metropolitan planning organization. We could actually go down to project background there, and that'll give us some information. So I'm not going to read the screen, but Maycourts, I serve on the TCC, which is the I believe Technical Advisory Committee. That's not what TCC stands for, but Technical Something Committee. And there's also a policy committee, which the membership of the policy committee is comprised of the elected officials, our mayor, the mayor of, I believe, Watkinsville. Well, Ronnie, do you have a good idea of the structure of the policy committee of May Courts?
I'm sorry, I'm not prepared to speak on that, Daniel.
Okay,
Everything is on the website. You can read about their charter, how they are required by law based on the population as a metropolitan, the history, and bylaws of May Court and their function. And the May Court is not necessarily serving GDOT. It's more like it's required based on the population, and it is specific to this region, to the counties included in this region. And it's a pathway for us, the locals, and for GDOT to tell the federal level government what is our plans for the next 20 years, 25 years, and also list our projects in the next 5 years that are funded, and update this plan. As you may have seen, a lot of projects move forward and they're not within the plan. They get funding through discretionary grant. And also there's a lot of work done on the local level that is not necessarily funded through federal funding. And that is something May Court staff are willing and able to work with us on and include within the plan, not necessarily to fund it through federal funding, but to show that it's in the plan and show all the efforts taking place within the plan currently and moving into the future.
great, thank you.
Thank you, Ronnie.
The short version is that this is a survey hosted by them. There are public engagement opportunities coming up. This is one of the big online survey pushes. There's a user group, I believe. Scott is actually a member of that, among a few, plenty of other people. So he can probably give you that point of view on it. Ultimately, the thing to consider here is that the MTP, which that's what this survey is for, that's the Metropolitan Transportation Plan right here. This is for 2050, and they update this every 5 years. And that's our 25-year plan, as Ronnie was just saying. The projects move from the MTP into the TIP, Transportation Improvement Plan. That's the TIP. That in order for any roadway project to commence, it needs to be included in the TIP. So we often do TIP amendments when we get discretionary grant funding, such as North Avenue or
TIP being a subset of the MTP.
right. So the TIP is actually like this. These are projects being installed in the next 3-5 years. I can't remember which one. But the thing with all of this is that the money that is feeding into implementation of the MTP and the TIP is required to use. It's required to be used for certain things. So currently, having a very high need for multimodal access along these roads is not necessarily enough to push it over the edge of getting it moved from the MTP into the TIP. Having it in the MTP is important though. So an example is like Hawthorne Avenue expansion. There is a project within the MTP for widening Hawthorne and adding in full bike lanes and all that kind of stuff. Now, within that recommendation, it says once Hawthorne gets to a certain volume threshold, we're nowhere near that. And one of the things that we really want to look at when the consultant is working on this plan is not only identifying where do we need to plan the capacity for the next 25 years, like first they look at the growth and they say, okay, based on this information, this is where we're going to see the growth. And here's our current transportation system. and here's our current transportation system in 25 years. If we did nothing, if we implement the TIP, if we implement the full MTP, that kind of thing. And so it doesn't include a lot about bicycles and pedestrians. It does include transit. So right now, I think one of the things that jumped out to me, and unfortunately I don't have the stats right in front of me, but it's I believe we currently have 35 road widening projects in the TIP. Road widening is not necessarily what I, as the bike ped safety coordinator, believe is most needed in these things. But once again, we're kind of bound within a certain realm of like what these dollars can go towards. So there is a big push federally for a lot of safe infrastructure and stuff like that. And I think what's really important when we think about the Metropolitan Transportation Plan is to ensure that we are really harnessing like what is the growth, where are we moving towards in our transportation system. You know, I've requested that we look at the level of service for multimodal access across the board. You know, you can see it's not just Athens here. We got Madison, we have Oconee, we have the surrounding cities. It's really annoying that that pops up every time. But you know, these are the boundaries of the MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization. And
How did those boundaries get established? Was that population density or?
so if I remember correctly, so like Jackson was given an opportunity to either be in our MPO or in the other MPO that's north of us, Greenville, is that the city? Gainesville, yeah, I got them mixed up. So Jackson opted at that time to be part of Gainesville. Once the population within these boundaries reaches 200,000, it is no longer an MPO. It's then upgraded into similar to what the Atlanta Regional Commission is, which that is a 20 county boundary, much larger area, much higher population density, and they're an entire dedicated staff. We have 2 staff members. So when that happens, when we hit 200,000, that's when we're expected to have to comply with the new needs and regulations and stuff. But
And that's the population within that boundary.
correct.
We're not that far from 200,000.
Yeah, we're really not.
We're not, I mean, I think,
So with regard to the survey, we should just fill it out as individuals.
yeah, basically,
The public should fill this out. And guide the planning efforts and helps allocate funding in the future.
yeah, so you can see, I mean, it's all about transportation and really making sure that we're getting a decent idea of how we're, of like what the user base and what the survey respondents have. So if you can go through, talk about all these things, it asks you about your priority on things, you know, the current quality, like there's a lot of really important stuff that's being captured here. So, and then there's, I believe, also a map input tool that'll tell you how to do it. And then there's also a Spanish version. So basically, this is mostly just to tell you guys, please take a moment to fill this out. Please spread it through your social media, through your neighbors. You know, this is our bike and pedestrian board and commission. And hopefully anyone online right now will also share it out. The more survey responses, the higher quality data that we get and the better representative kind of picture of, you know, Athens and the surrounding counties.
I don't remember seeing a deadline, do you?
It's through the next month.
Okay.
And the URL is that storymaps.arcgis.com? That seems.
Can you just send a link?
Yeah, well, I'll
It's
send
on the
it.
agenda too.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah. It's linked on the agenda.
So with it being linked on the agenda, anyone online could access the agenda, open up the PDF, access the link through there, or reach out to anyone in the planning office or in Transportation Public Works, and we're happy to share the link as well.
So who funds this? Is this mostly the state of Georgia? or through GDOT or is it something else?
It's federal dollars. So there's two main types of funding, discretionary and formula. So formula dollars are calculated like basically they're pre-calculated based on population density and stuff like that. And that's where dollars are coming in. On that front, discretionary is the grants that we're applying for. So RAISE, Reconnecting Communities, Safe Streets for All, those are all discretionary. So the dollars for this are formula. And I believe the money to fund the planning of this is given to us by GDOT, but it's from FHWA through GDOT to us, if that makes sense. Still don't fully understand, like it's a very complex system and you know, there's a lot of acronyms that get thrown around, but at the end of the day, you know, I'm on the committee to provide insight from my point of view and any updates to any projects that happen.
Is there any sort of vision for the Mayports area? Like what transportation could look like? I mean, does anyone have any way of putting that together?
That's what they're doing.
Trying to do with this?
Yeah. So I mean, the plan itself is basically a series of projects listed and there's an info page on each project. I actually kind of like the structure of it. It gets a little hefty when you're looking at all of them, but I think it would be a really interesting approach if we had like an appendix in the Athens in Motion plan that basically pulled up an individual project and had an info sheet on it. It's a little bit more than we have the capacity to do because, you know, you got your cost estimates that change and there's a lot that goes into just updates as things get updated and funding moves around. Like there's a lot of work that goes into keeping that plan updated. But yeah, so this is kind of the demographic survey, and then there's a mapping exercise that'll really get into the location. And I believe, I haven't gone through it myself, but there should be something in there that shows you, here are the current projects, give us your feedback on them. Is there anything missed? If there's not, I'm sure there's an area where you can like add your comments. So just keep an eye out for that. But I can get more information and try to send that out if that's a question we want to find out.
These surveys are great. I always appreciate being able to add my thoughts to them, but they seem a little flawed especially when, you know, we're living where we live and we have the infrastructure that we have and, you know, we get around the way we feel safest to get around, but it's nice if somebody that actually knows how to set this up so that, you know, there are a lot of things that none of us can actually dream of because we you know, it's not what we like, oh, I'd like my bike lane a little wider or something like that. And I think there's so much more that's possible. And I hope they're not just limiting it to like the vision that we can see because this is our reality.
Well, and that's why plans like the Athens in Motion plan need to exist in court and kind of in line with this. And you know, we're going to be reviewing the plans. There's also a technical advisory committee in the May Courts group, and we have about a month. We have some homework, and we're going to be looking through it. And we have a meeting set up. Is it this week? Is it this week? Okay, we have a meeting set up with Leisure Services because they're also, you know, looking at the Greenway network tomorrow. So, you know, and that is our job, to be the dreamers and, you know, come up with those concepts and you know, we want to hear from the community and from you guys about like, here's how I'm feeling when I ride this, or here's why I don't ride that, or this kind of worries me in this spot. And then we can say, well, here's 5 or 6 solutions. You know, how do we want to prioritize this?
So if not one of us actually forwards the link to the May Courts MTP and the survey and everything to any other human on earth, how does anybody hear about it? I mean, is the county?
On Facebook,
What's that?
I'll put it on Facebook.
No. If none of us do it, because obviously, you indicated earlier, biking and walking are not really part of this. So we're kind of ancillary to the process, and I appreciate the inclusion, but I'm curious to know what's being done to distribute the survey, to give people an awareness of what May Courts is, which I would not know if I didn't come to this meeting.
No.
So I'm kind of curious about that.
Wanna check one thing.
And we have a lot of things to get through, so I'm gonna ask Daniel to maybe quickly try and answer that. And
So, if you go to accgov.com/surveys, there is,
I do that all the time.
all, there's social media posts that go out through, our, ACC Gov, Twitter, Facebook, Nextdoor, I believe. There's listservs. This is one method, right? So they're reaching out to BACs that are involved, and it's not necessarily that like this is not related to bike and pedestrian. You saw there's a lot of questions about bike and pedestrian stuff, but
No, the focus was more on the distribution of the questions than.
yeah, for sure. But this right here, if you go to accgov.com/surveys, and this is what we always link back to when there's these pushes. There's tabling events. I don't have the full public outreach strategy or schedule in front of me that May Courts is working with. This is just I like to get this out through my network of,
Well, I'll
Everybody
certainly
can touch
to our chair regarding time and everything, but I just, it struck me as a weird situation where I'd hate if we were the conduit.
no, we are not the only conduit to this.
yeah, it's our responsibility.
But yeah, I think if we want to make sure that we're getting that good cross section of Athens.
Okay, thank you.
That right?
Yes. Yeah, the consultant is leading the public engagement efforts, so.
Okay, there's a consultant. Okay. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to our major items, which includes sidewalk gaps, small programs, and Randy has a presentation for us, and I'm going to make it on the big screen, and Randy, you can just tell me when to advance.
Sounds good.
We want to turn off the lights.
Yeah, that would help. Yeah, the front.
I got it. Good luck. Try the far right one.
Daniel, can you make the participant screen go away so the screen can be bigger for them?
Try different lights.
Is that good or one more?
We need the opposite situation.
Yeah.
Dark up front.
Flip it around the other way.
Maybe you better do it.
Daniel has.
That's the man. I try to help.
Participants go away.
It's like our house. I've lived in it 5 years. I still haven't figured out all the light switches. There are so many three ways and.
And there's always that one that just doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
All right. That looks good, Daniel. Thank you. Randy, take it away.
All right, thank you. So one of the projects we've been working on in the policy and projects is this. Started with the sidewalk gap coming out of the small programs initiative. And one of the big challenges of coming up with this definition. Next slide, please. Again, how do we define the gaps, which, I mean, we certainly know we have plenty of. Next slide.
I think that gap has actually been filled in, right?
It has.
Yes.
There you go. Man, success, everybody.
It's not that old.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So far, it's pretty much just been Daniel and I kind of brainstorming some different things, but I think definitely when we're looking at these criteria, that we definitely decided they need to be unbiased. They need to be defined prior to gap identification. They needed to be data-driven, because regardless of what we come up with and present, somebody won't like it. So trying to make it that, we really weren't influenced by our own, what we think it should be, and really try and make it data-driven. So we came up with these items as our initial criteria list. The social vulnerability index, which, we like to include in everything, which we should, of course. Cost, because we have a limited budget. Looking at how is this gap associated with a, population density? How many people are around this gap? Looking at the community amenities, so will this gap help connect, if it's happened to be closed, will it help connect to social offices? Will it help hospitals? All those things that the community really needs to get to, and would be nice if they could do on foot if they in fact don't have any other mode of transportation. And then also looking at total amenities, shopping and, other things that people would like to get to. And of course, very important, safety. How does it, will it improve safety? How will this gap fit into the existing connectivity? As we ultimately try and, create this one nice, fully connected network within Athens-Clarke County. And then looking at population served. So will this gap and the difference from population density to population served is, yeah, there may be a lot of people there, but will they use this? Are there people who really need to be able to utilize this sidewalk if we determine to fill it in? And then lastly, looking at transit proximity. So this connect housing to bus stops and other modes of transportation. Next slide, please. And then we were looking at, from there, with those criteria, looking at how do we score this? So, we have these 7, 9. And we're kind of looking at, so we gave each one of those, and this hasn't been done yet, so these numbers are all me typing them last night. Give them a weight. So, do we want to have the SVI be weighted more than cost or population density, rather than just give a score to each one of them, because some of them are more important than others. And that needs to be assigned, yeah.
So this is just an idea to the right.
Yeah, this is just an idea of, come up with a weighted value for each of the criteria. And then ultimately we'd look at the gaps and rate them based on each of those and give it a score. And then come up with a total gap score and then rank those gaps appropriately. And then ultimately, once they're ranked, we have 1.4 million. I forget what the number is right now off the top of my head, but say, okay, that gets us down to number 6. And then that proposal would then be presented to Mayor and Commission.
And this would be for every identified sidewalk gap that we thought was worthy of measuring the measured?
Yeah, there are a lot of gaps, and it would take us quite some time to.
But presumably we could come up with half a dozen right off the bat that we think are pretty important and weight them.
I'm thinking so too, yeah. I mean, well, just in the short, you were clicking away for maybe 20 minutes on your map at our last meeting, and it wasn't a very big area. When you're looking at all of Athens, for sure, there's a lot of gaps.
And is a gap a certain length, or is it
Well,
short or long, or?
That's another consideration too. It kind of falls into cost, but we were kind of thinking maybe that is an easy cutoff right away. I mean, if it's, a mile-long gap, well, it's going to be tough at any score because we'll run out of money.
Is there a way to somehow factor in the existence of the goat path?
I would like to, but without having pretty comprehensive data collection, there's not really how do I know where all the social paths are alongside roadways? I can go out, I can see them as I drive.
People are walking in.
Right, but we also have 600 miles of roadway in Athens, and for me to drive 600 miles of it,
I think maybe to the point is how are the sidewalks getting on the list to be evaluated with this rubric? Is maybe part of the question.
Yeah, it's just like, I mean, I could go out and, say, okay, so we need to put a sidewalk here, here, and here, because I see the pathways where people are walking.
Right.
Yeah, so what she's saying, like, so if we are looking at, we've got a sidewalk that we're gonna put this weighted criteria against, then that could factor in, is what you're wondering.
Right.
potentially. Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, if people are clearly using it as a walking route, then I think that should be a strong vote in its favor.
Yeah, we could just say, current usage.
Could just be
Yeah.
yes or no. It's like, does it have a social?
Well, we-
trail? Yes, give it a point.
We do have some data that shows general pedestrian activity throughout the whole county on all the roadway segments. There's like gaps in it when you're looking at individual segments, but if you want to look at like the general look of it, you can see it kind of across the county where most people are walking and biking, but it's more of an index scale and not an individual count. And it's also based on big data, which isn't always super accurate because a lot of people have the option to hide their privacy, make it where their data is not being collected. And that basically it was previously used when there wasn't as much kind of ability to do that. And so we have historic counts of locations, but there's a lot of privacy centered data these days, which is great. But it also means that it's not a big enough, sorry, I don't know.
So, and I think too, that the goat path is a good place to start. That of those, when we start trying to apply which gaps we even score, the goat path, we start with those.
And that's what I say.
It's the worn in, where you can, where you see that the grass is all gone and people.
Right, if you drive on Atlanta Highway, you'll notice that there are paths
Yeah.
where people have
Okay,
created.
this is not the goat path, it's a
Oh,
goat
no,
path.
that's it, yeah.
So a number of places will have a goat path.
Right.
Got it.
Oh, yes.
Okay, then as long as I've interrupted, one more quick question.
Sorry.
For any given potential gap, who and how is the SVI assessed?
SVI is a national social vulnerability index.
CDC runs, right?
Yes. So we have at the tract level areas, there's polygons showing the different scores.
Okay, and that's something y'all have?
Yeah. I mean, it's available publicly.
No, Daniel says I have it is good enough.
Yes,
for me.
perfect. But ultimately what that means is that there's ranges and we can basically divvy those ranges up. And if this sidewalk gap falls within this tract,
No, that's perfect. That's
it
what.
gets a higher SVI.
As we are striving for objectivity, I was trying to figure out here a miracle happens box, and you've got the miracle. It's all good.
And ultimately that is the equity piece, right?
Yeah.
So that's where that really comes into play.
So I guess that this is related to safety, but what about just starting with like pedestrian vehicle crash reports or deaths, injuries, deaths? You would assume that the greater the number,
I think,
course, that that's a place of high need.
what's our discussion around the safety point? Is that based on our high injury network or
It was around high injury. net.
which we'll cover in our next presentation? Good question. We'll cover that in the local road too.
So it's kind of unsafety is what gives you the rating, not how safe the roadway is now gets more potential for us putting a sidewalk gap. It's how unsafe the road is.
Yeah, I guess I could call that safety improvement.
Yes. If you target the areas that have the highest injury rate, then that prioritizes those sections.
So Randy, you had a little bit more you wanted to go into. There's another slide.
Yeah, if you get the last slide there, please. So again, I mentioned this already, that we were starting to look at identified gaps in the overall map that Daniel possesses and looking at those. So our next steps will be to look at those gaps and start scoring them And just a plug that policy and projects does meet the third Thursday of the month at 4 o'clock. And I'm flexible with time, and we can move that around a little bit. If you're interested in coming, send me what time you can make, and we'll see what we can do to accommodate everyone. Because I would really love to have everyone's input, because it's, not only is it a lot, but I'd like to get as much opinion so that we're, trying to come up with something that everybody can agree to when we get through on the first shot for approval. So,
Yes, if you want to get in the weeds on this and have a lot of questions about the criteria and what this means going forward.
because it hasn't been finalized yet, this is all.
And I apologize, I did want to
Oh, yeah.
be involved and bring these questions up in appropriate places, but I
Okay.
was unavailable to last time. The window is ordinarily okay.
Yeah, oh, okay, very good.
That's a goat path?
That is.
It's a ghost path.
Okay.
Was.
All right.
Social trail, deer path, goat path. There's a lot of names for it.
Okay.
There's really interesting things that you can do when it snows to see where cars actually drive in the road versus the amount of pavement that's there. So you can, there's been some really cool studies in the past in like New York where they set up a camera, they were able to see where most of the vehicle tracking has gone. You can also see it, there's a name for it, I can't remember, but in the fall, when leaves are on the roads, you can tell where cars are actually driving. And so like a really great example for me is on Boulevard, there's a traffic circle, and a lot of people speed through the traffic circle because they drive in the area where cars are supposed to park. And so they don't have to navigate the geometric kind of things that are incorporated there because they're riding in that space.
That make the traffic safer.
I've looked at that in the fall and been like, we should do some bulb outs here. Or like, build out, even do, curb and kind of delineate that parking space and then get yelled at on that.
How do you go about doing the survey
Which surveys?
of where the gaps are, of where the site?
Oh, that's a great question.
It seems like Google has all this information already in their Street View, if somebody could figure out if Google could give it to us.
Yeah, they don't share it.
But I mean, maybe
It's
somebody,
more like,
somebody from a city planning and safety should reach out and say, hey, is there a way that, could you write an algorithm that
Yeah.
just tell us what streets don't have?
they don't respond to us. Yeah, no, this stuff exists and corporations have the ability to track it. And there are companies that we can hire that have data agreements with them where they take that data, they keep it secret, and they repackage it in a way where we are able to see it. But there's a lot of privacy concerns, and it is interesting, the world that we live in where, I appreciate that government has limited ability to look at these things. I don't appreciate that, private corporations have way more flexibility in what they can really gather about us. But yeah, ultimately, for this specific instance where we're looking at data collection for our sidewalk apps, that is something that is going to be captured in the data gathering phase of our work with the Vision Zero Safety Action Plan. So that's within the scope there. We can do kind of a first pass of just looking around and identifying like, okay, well, here are our sidewalks and here's the areas that don't have sidewalks. But that's even based on our sidewalk data, which is maybe not completely complete. But, we do have some funding to hammer that out in that aspect, so.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna move us along to a brief budget discussion, and I'm gonna give you the short version of this. That we have $11,400 left. And after chatting with Daniel, what we're thinking about, and this is for the fiscal year, so this money has to be encumbered pretty quickly in order to have it spent. So what we were thinking is anything we need for spring tabling, like I think we still had a lot of vests, but I don't know how many let's get those or any other
Yes, I think
supplies.
we've got a bunch of them in Daniel's new office.
Yeah. So whatever is needed, maybe let's figure that out in the next month or so. And then have some money go to our plan revision efforts, public engagement. So what that might look like is, do we have a Saturday with a consultant where we come together? Would that cover food? What about, when we're reaching out to the community? I know, there was a public engagement with, North Avenue, I think at East Athens, where breakfast was served or something like that. So we can help, and we don't have to be solely responsible for funding those things, but some of that money can go back into those public engagement efforts. And then finally, the bike racks program that we had started, go ahead and allocate some more money for an additional set of bike racks that we could give to places and businesses in the community. So that is what we're thinking. Did I miss anything, Daniel?
I think the only, let's see, bike racks. There's so there are some other things too, like we could get some other ideas if none of those are kind of on the table. One idea that came up is we did the Georgia's Safe Sidewalks implementation near downtown. So if you go back and kind of to the western side of downtown, the neighborhoods back in there, you'll see grind patterns that are all pretty uniform and smooth. We worked with Georgia Safe Sidewalks to kind of do a pilot area. So we have a phase 2 area laid out, but there's no funding in our budget to cover it. So we could do it. We could go anywhere from tabling materials and outreach stuff and plan engagement all the way to grinding down bumps in the sidewalk in a few spots. So that's the only other thing that off the top of my head we might get a quick turnaround on. But
so with regard to our budget, you're in charge of it. You don't need an approval from us. You just need direction.
But I'd prefer not a vote necessarily, but if we could do a vote, but
I wouldn't.
it's preferred to have your buy-in.
Because I haven't had time to think about it.
Yeah, it's preferred to get your buy-in. I'm not required. You're not, as a commission, don't have the authority to vote and expend the funds. But I'd love to get your buy-in and hear your vote.
On the bike rack program, I presume that includes the cost of installing the racks at business.
Great question.
The installation is, if it's on county property, we have that we could probably handle for the most part. If it's a private property thing, then that would be an MOU where we would gift the bike rack and they would handle installation per our requirements. So we could say, here's the bike rack in this MOU, you have to use the APBP bicycle parking guidelines to delineate and choose a spot to install this. That would be kind of on a request-based system.
Because I mentioned this a few meetings ago, but I still like the idea that if we focus on areas that we've actually added bike lanes, Prince Ave, for example, and find regions where there's no place to walk the bike, then that would be high impact, I think, and it could attract more users to the bike path, I think, too.
Yeah, Daniel, you have a vision or a plan, right?
TBD, we haven't developed it, but that's going to be one of the projects that Katie and I kind of get started on, and that's, I think, on our discussion for one of these upcoming projects and policy committee meetings is to go over that program. But y'all could vote today to say, I'd love for you to buy another 20 bike racks, and I will get those ordered and delivered to the firehouse, and then we'll have 40.
You want somebody to make that motion?
Yeah.
I'll make that motion.
Look at how he's going for it.
Okay, so we have some on the floor to, out of our remaining budget, go ahead and allocate money from that for 20 additional bike racks for this program. Discussion about this, because I was not,
I'll second.
okay, we have a second, first and a second.
Actually, I'll add some discussion. I
Yes,
feel like,
discussion.
I feel like rather than just have 40 racks sitting around in a firehouse, it would be, maybe a committee that we need from AIM would be to have somebody who's some people who are going to actually actively look for businesses or find places in need that, rather than just random, like, oh, I'd like a bike rack, but maybe that's not connected to things. Well, I think we should put some effort into that.
And I think, I agree, there is going to be some effort. I just think that it's a staff-led thing. Or it needs to go to an existing committee.
And I think the question is, we need to allocate the funds for the fiscal year ends.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's fine.
Yes. Yeah, so.
Fine.
It just resets.
No. I fully understand about budgets that way.
Okay, yeah.
What I don't understand is it sounds like it's not our budget. It sounds like it's an Athens-Clarke County budget that is controlled by Athens-Clarke County. And y'all would merely like suggestions from us as to what to do with that chunk of it?
And that chunk of it goes towards the Athens in Motion commission goals and work plan.
Daniel doesn't want to be the only one with his name on this, is what he's trying to say.
So if I could, from a procedural thing, what we probably should be voting on is a recommendation to Daniel as to the purchase of some bike racks to help empty out our budget before the fiscal year end, as opposed to a vote to do that, a vote to buy racks, because we can't buy racks.
Mhm.
Okay. I mean, am I understanding the?
Let's interpreting the words that were said earlier.
Yeah. And I think the discussion point that you're bringing up is like, how do we do this program? And I think that's probably part of projects and policy committee discussion, which it could be we could have it as maybe the focus of May, April. So we could put a major discussion item on the agenda for the commission as a whole to discuss kind of how they would like to see that program implemented. I don't need the program to exist in order to, we have the skeletal bones of what we're going to be doing. So just to get the bike racks ready and have that queued up and ready to go so we can hit the ground running. But I like what you were saying about, like, even if it's just discussing with businesses, like, hey, is this something that y'all would be interested in? And then give them the form to fill it out once that form exists. Like, it can be an open thing where we have it open on there, who's eligible to apply for this. I think initially starting off, I'd like some pilot locations. I've already talked with Scott about potentially doing, like, Athens is a great pilot location, and just to work out the kinks of how does that MOU work? He's a tenant, is the owner, how does the owner be involved? There's the requirements of landscape around the building. So those are all conversations that will need to happen. And the easiest thing is if there's parks that y'all feel like don't have enough bike parking, I can go talk to Todd and say, hey Todd, where can we have, or like, we want to install some bike racks here you go. And then their maintenance crews can install it. Or if there's spots downtown, we can get central services to install it.
Okay, so at this point, we're just allocating the funds. And if you guys want to talk more about the program, I think it seems to go maybe policy and projects. So they show up to policy and projects.
Okay.
All right, yeah.
Y'all can also have those conversations in advance. If you can't make the policy and projects meeting, you can
I've got it on my.
work it out. So cool.
And I think we want more bike racks if
Yeah.
we're encouraging people to ride bicycles, and we hope to have more bicycle traffic. We're gonna need to have places to park their bicycles.
So a final procedural comment.
Yes, so this is a
Sure.
this is a recommendation.
Yeah.
There are first and a second on the floor. Any further discussion? All those in favor of recommending Daniel spend money from our budget for 20 new bike racks, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. Okay, well, we've taken care of that part of our budget. I'm gonna move us along. If there's tabling items we need, let's try and get those to Daniel for our next meeting. Do we, do we need a vote to spend money on tabling items?
We need
Well,
some flag is what we need, because we ran out of stuff at the last event we did.
Yeah, maybe
Yeah.
we just do a temperature check. Are y'all, in the past, we have used some of our money for tabling items. Do you want to have an additional discussion about this? Are you okay with Daniel working with education and communication to spend the money? Are you?
I mean, honestly,
Like-
it's something where we can also conduct it through, if you guys have ideas for swag, like, y'all can go ahead and just vote, like, how much money up to a certain amount, like up to $2,000. If that's what you want to do, to go towards things at tabling, and leave it up to communications committee to identify it. And if you have ideas, send an email and give us ideas.
So where are we with the bike lights? Scott, are you still listening? We still have bike lights, or are they all gone?
Scott, could you hear Teresa? Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Well, all of our online
We
people.
could buy some more bike lights. We
Yeah.
get some more of those little slap bracelet things.
Yeah, bike lights, slap bracelets, helmets, vests.
Whatever. Yeah, whatever. I mean, we've got a lot of these.
It might be helpful if somebody can come help take inventory of what we currently have, and then we can
We could
restock from
reorder
there.
vests, like maybe we need more kid-sized vests.
Mhm.
I think we might have run out of little ones.
Okay,
Okay, yeah. Y'all talk, figure out
We'll
what
talk
you
amongst
need. If you
ourselves.
want to vote from us, or if you're like, we want to know that we can spend $2,000, please let me know. We can put that on as an agenda item next meeting. Cool. And then maybe we can talk more about money that's left over next time for plan revision stuff and get into some specifics, Daniel, on. Then,
yeah. Well, I think. Yeah,
okay.
Is there any opportunity, just because of the date for the Twilight, for us to do any? I thought that was really cool. We sponsored the conference, or we had a sponsorship with the conference. Is there anything like that for Twilight where we could kind of get our, it's a good idea, get our new logo out there?
I don't know if we've received a package asking us about that, but we could be on the lookout for that.
yeah,
And we didn't table up Twilight last year. We did Clarke County School District Family Day, and it was a big deal. So we will, if we can do that again, I'd like to do the Family Day over Twilight. But yes, we can keep yours out for that. And then certainly, assuming that we get more money, the same amount of money over the summer, we have the opportunity to sponsor things again. So we will have potentially more money coming. All right, it's 10 after, and I want Daniel to have enough time to be able to go into the presentation without rushing too much, because it will just cut into his staff updates. So Daniel, can you do this in 30 minutes? Or can you do this in less than 30 so they can answer questions? So there was a 45-minute version of this presentation. Let's maybe keep our questions to a minimum, because Daniel probably has a slide, and try and save it for the end. If you're not sure that that saving it for the end is gonna be good, that's okay. But I just want to make sure we can get through it, because it's a lot, and I asked him to do a condensed version, so he's already gonna be rushing.
I want to change the screen, that's a thought.
And to give you some background, this was Sherelle's big project, right? Where we came to the library at one point.
It's displaying it on my screens, not the big one. So here's, okay. That's not gonna work. That work? Doesn't seem like it. Oh, see that? There's a display going on.
You need to put something on that screen two up on the top.
So it's sharing this, which is good. And then now I'm gonna push this button and see what happens.
Looking like that.
All right. Local road safety plan. We presented this to the mayor and commission a couple weeks ago. It's being voted on next week on Tuesday. You want to see the full depth of the presentation and discussion, feel free to go back and watch that on YouTube. The purpose here was to kind of present this plan to the mayor and commission. The local road safety development process and content are tailored to local issues and needs. So the process results in a prioritized list of issues, risks, actions, and improvements that can be used to reduce fatalities and serious injuries on our locally owned roads. So one thing I'll mention is local roads, there's the designations, local, arterial, collector. When we say local roads throughout this presentation, we're referring to locally owned and operated. So not UGA, not Georgia Department of Transportation, not private roads, gated communities, not alleyways, anything like that, just our locally managed roads. So the intent's not just to implement the engineering solutions, but also outline a holistic approach to roadway safety that addresses the 5 E's, which is enforcement, education, encouragement, emergency response, and equity. It really comes down to creating a framework that we can participate in and kind of lead a user, like work groups to foster communication between the different departments that deal with everything on our roadways. So here's our vision statement. It's a lofty one, but it goes towards, it's what is covered in our Vision Zero resolution, and it's ultimately the goal of Vision Zero and what we're striving for in Athens-Clarke County. So the intent of the plan, like I mentioned earlier, not just to implement engineering solutions, but we want to achieve reduction in severe crashes, increase awareness of road safety and risks through education and enforcement, develop lasting partnerships for addressing road safety, develop support for grant funding applications to address road safety, prioritize the need for those investments, and then evaluate existing and develop new processes within the county to identify shortcomings and improve the safety of our transportation system. So we were selected to participate in the local road safety pilot program in 2022. It included training, the use of safety data through the new metrics platform, which is now called AASHTOWare, crash data analysis support from GDOT and the AASHTOWare team, as well as FHWA, technical support from that team. We had an in-person workshop where we went down to Macon and hammered out a lot of details of our emphasis areas, and they were able to help us kind of dig in, and we had little work groups, and we got to see our emphasis areas that were developed. And then there was a template that was provided for the local road safety plan. So one of the things that we found, in that process was the emphasis areas are informed based on areas where Athens is statistically higher than other areas. So, we'll get more into that, but just wanted to kind of mention that. So agencies that have implemented local road safety plans have seen measurable reductions in serious and fatal crashes. And this really only works if they have buy-in from community partners though. So this plan will only be effective if government and community organizations can work together to enact the plan. Also, if we have a completed, finished, finalized plan, which is being voted on next week, it opens us up to being able to apply for ample amounts of funding through other programs. Specifically, I believe the Strategic Highway Safety Plan and the Highway Safety Improvement Program, which are both road safety initiatives in the state of Georgia. So we've got a number of stakeholders and participant in various working group teams that will meet quarterly. And these working groups will work together to address those 4 emphasis areas that we're going to cover later. And our lovely Katie will lead those discussions in those working groups. So this is just kind of showing over the course of 2022, we attended those virtual meetings, in-person workshops, and kind of what that timeline looks like. There was a community stakeholder group. I believe a lot of you participated, and that was really helpful. So thanks for everyone who was able to show up at the time, and we appreciated the feedback. So Vision Zero, safe systems, safe mobility. Really, how does this plan fit into that Vision Zero strategy as a whole? So this is for our locally owned and maintained roadways, while the Vision Zero Safety Action Plan is more systemic and involves a lot more coordination with GDOT and other organizations. And that one really looks at the county as a whole, not just our locally owned road. So really you can look at this as a precursor to that, and we'll probably, after the development of the Vision Zero Safety Action Plan, will likely be a subsection of it as well. So it's something that can exist now where we can go ahead and start implementation on some of these things and apply for funding. And once that vision is, the Vision Zero plan is kind of created and developed, it'll be wrapped into it, as well as do all of, kind of cover the future updates and do that kind of plan development moving forward. So generally speaking, the most affordable neighborhoods in Athens are also the least walkable. So this usually results in those with the lowest incomes bearing the highest transportation costs and more frequent exposure to transportation risks. So here you can see the walk score in Athens. These are the green areas are higher walkability. So you can see where our higher walkability areas are. And over here, you can also see where the most expensive neighborhoods in Athens are, the darker colors being more expensive. So what to kind of look at here is the areas that are not walkable are also some of the most affordable areas to live in, making it, very basically more dangerous to walk in areas where there's not infrastructure in those lower income. Demographic status and crashes. We've got the youngest and oldest are most vulnerable in terms of age. And beyond the slower walking speeds, increasing the exposure risk there, older pedestrians are at a higher risk of death when involved in a crash. So analysis of crash data have found urban school children of color to be at disproportionate risk of dying in a pedestrian crash. And so here in Athens, we've launched a partnership with Clarke County School District to systemically identify and address those areas of risk. So we are working with through road safety audits, school safety audits, and partnering with GDOT to get safety equipment once the funding is available again. So as we kind of look at the approach that we take in implementing this plan, we really want to look at safety and design. So it's not just how we design our roads, but those land uses around our roads, the policies that govern how we do things, and the ability for those with mobility impairments to access the resources that they need So designing safe road systems includes designing communities for easy access to core needs and services. And this is all stuff that you can really see are coming up in conversations around the future land use map update that's going on. So that future land use planning that's going on is really important to identifying those core areas, and then that kind of goes in with creating the walkable neighborhoods, creating the destinations, and it all ties together. Here are some traffic calming measures. You can see, it could be as simple as adding in, a speed table or raised crosswalk. It could be as complicated as kind of building out concrete bulb outs. You can see something like this over on Clayton Street, where we increase the bulb out size. There's really no need for the road pavement to go all the way to the curb. Just with paint showing "don't park here," you could actually utilize a lot of those hatched areas to be pedestrian spaces. It moves pedestrians closer to the line of sight of people driving, making it safer for them to queue up. You can also see in instances like this where a four-way is converted to, not have cut-through traffic as much. So neighborhoods that have a high percentage of cut-through traffic, if you make it more difficult to cut through, they're not as likely to use that as their cut-through anymore. So this is usually done in cities where there's more of a grid than in Athens. And then, traffic circles are a really great way to just slow people through these intersections, getting them to at least comply with the stop, if not like slowing down to be able to go through that. So, an example would be converting a typical intersection, as you see on the left, to a roundabout. And this is one that we love to do. A lot of communities love to do it. They're expensive, but they are really effective. There's a 90% reduction in fatalities and a 76% reduction in injuries. It results in slower speeds, and that also makes it generally safer for pedestrians. So even just looking at our crash data for the 2 roundabouts that we've installed in the last 5 years here in Athens, it met those numbers of 90% reduction, way fewer crashes. And we usually anticipate that there will be an increase in minor and no injury crashes, just side swipes, in that initial rollout, but we didn't even see that increase on those 2 particular projects. So Philadelphia's Safe People work is focused not only on safety education, but also empowering residents to talk about Vision Zero and take ownership of their streets. And so, the kind of approach here is, laid out and really getting that education outreach into the hands of the community. So you don't have to have a committee or a full-time position or an entire government doing that outreach. You have, the community itself really feeling ownership, and so that's pretty cool. So basically, hopefully by the end of today, each of you and the commissioners that I presented this to will feel empowered to advocate for safer streets in the community.
Yes, data.
So that was my version of what Tim said. He was way more excited when he talks. I just can't replicate that. Here's our data. So this is a 10-year period. On the left, this is the total crashes in Athens. Local roads, orange. GDOT roads is purple. Really, it's GDOT and UGA because I believe UGA roads are considered state roads. That's basically all the local roads are not state roads. That's how that's captured. The breakdown in percentages of serious injury crashes, and so you got the green on the left. That's GDOT proportions of serious injury crashes and fatal crashes. And then the red area is our local serious and fatal. And then that breakdown is next to that in the purple. So you can see we have 61%, even though those GDOT roads are often the ones that feel the most unsafe and have the most complaints, and really they are not the majority of our crashes. It's mostly because we have so many more miles of local roads. This is one of the statistics. So from here on out, we're only gonna be looking at crashes on the local roads. These are not, is not a breakdown of crashes, including GI roads. So serious injuries, and fatal injuries are here. You can see it kind of undulates. We don't have 2023 data in there, but, our all-time high there was 23 in 2021, then it dropped to 11, and it's raising back up to 20 in 2023. Last year we had 20 fatalities. I don't have the number of serious injuries on me. You can see intersection-related crashes are increasing after, you know, years of kind of decreasing, like spiked.
As opposed to just running into somebody or what intersection?
There's so basically they make up, I believe, 61% of total crashes on the local road are intersection related. Meaning,
what does that? Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah, so like you have runoff road crashes, you have single driver crashes, you have fixed object crashes. So when someone runs off the road, drives into a telephone pole, that would be a single driver fixed object runoff road crash. So a crash can be multiple things.
Gotcha.
If this crash is related to an intersection in Athens,
so even
then it gets listed as an intersection.
Even if I'm backed up half mile or down Millage from the, I know that's not a local road, from the light there, and we got a dozen cars ahead of me, but somebody rear ends me, that's still an intersection related.
Well, if you're a half mile out, I would say no. If you're queued at the intersection and someone, or if you're slowing down, let's say
Millage, it could be half an out mile.
It could be. Yeah. So yeah, if you're stopped and someone rear ends you while you're waiting,
Gotcha.
if you are driving through and someone runs their red light and you T-bone, you know, even like if a pedestrian is crossing and they get hit while a vehicle is turning, those are all intersection crashes.
Yeah, I just never heard the term.
Thanks. Yeah. So of these 328 are serious injury and 62 are fatality over the last 10 years.
So that's eight accidents a day.
Wow.
In 2023.
That's crazy.
Which honestly, I would, as like you also factor in summer is kind of downtime and just we see a huge reduction in crashes. So I'm sure there's more.
Wow.
If you look at when there's more people on the roads. There were almost 13,000 crashes involving distracted driving. That's 40%. So there are distracted driving / intersection related. But this is just kind of, it was too complicated to show the visualization of that.
How is that defined? Is it like texting or what is?
There's suspected, so within the filter, there is suspected and confirmed. So sometimes it'll be, I was adjusting the radio and didn't see that the light had changed. Sometimes it'll be, you know, they could see that they were texting or on the phone, you're eating a sandwich, anything that takes your eyes off the road that, you know, especially with the way cars are designed today, it's, you know, how many different things can you do while you're in the pleasure of your driving vehicle, you know? There's a really interesting podcast. I won't go super deep into it, but there's a much higher rate of distracted driving in America. And they were kind of looking at correlation and stuff. And one thing that they found, they were like, well, when smartphones came on, we saw a big uptick, but other countries didn't. And the difference was that those other countries, like apparently, I think the stat they said was 75% of the vehicles over there in other countries are manual transmission. Whereas 1 or 2% of our vehicles on the road are manual. So with everything being automatic, you only really need one hand to drive. Whereas when you're using manual, it requires a lot more coordination and you don't have time to look at the phone because you're shifting gears and all that.
Well, I don't want to take us too far off our pace here, but one question I have is enforcement. I mean, like, people speed everywhere, people are texting everywhere. I mean, I mean, when I walk and ride my bike, which is all the time, everybody is texting. I mean, everybody meaning like greater than 50% of the cars that I see in today they're all texting and I mean, who's protecting us? I wish that the police would be, ticketing a lot more and, I don't know what the rules are or what the opinion.
Yeah, well, and even, I mean, you'll see it also like you're stopped in the car and the light turns green in the car in front of you, their head's pointed down, and that's messing with even just the flow. But that can sometimes give someone a false sense of security that they're being oh, I can cross.
Right.
When in reality, they're not paying attention. They might look up and say, oh, it's green. I'm going to turn right and then turn right into the crosswalk. So like, it's still dangerous, even if you're a stopped vehicle. There is a whole report that PD put out about distracted driving. A lot of that was fed into our report here, and the plan, and that'll be some ongoing discussions we're having with them. This is not how many people were distracted while driving. This is crashes related to distracted driving. So this is just a fraction. And there's really not a good way to know that full thing. But you can see here, even though the distracted driver crashes are going down, that kind of serious fatal crashes are increasing, kind of in opposition to that. So, that's kind of a red flag that, we look at, and it probably has more to do with, the way that the roads are built or how fast people are going or how distracted someone might be.
How big the vehicles are, how blind spots are.
Yeah. This is our impaired driver crashes. So you can see initially you look at it and you're like, okay, it's going down. That's good. This is basically 3% of all crashes are involved with impaired driving, 41 in serious injury and 26 in a fatality. You can see even though it's decreasing, those numbers of serious and fatal impaired crashes not really changing. It fluctuates a little bit between 2 and 10, but this is only this has confirmed and suspected as well that we were able to filter out. But even though this looks good, we're still much higher than other communities in Georgia. So just to go back to that earlier point, these 4 emphasis areas: intersection, distracted driving, impaired driving, and then the final one being bike and pedestrian, are all areas where statistically Athens-Clarke County has a higher rate in as a percentage of our crashes than other communities in Georgia. So they were kind of noted as outliers, and that's really where these emphasis areas come into play. So yeah, with that, actually, and I mentioned distracted driving report earlier. I was mistaken. It was impaired driving report. So they have a lot of information that they gave us on this. But according to ACCPD, that drop could be due to increased use of ride services, such as Uber and Lyft. And so Uber in 2014, Lyft in 2016, you can see there's a big drop right here. And then there's another one here and there. So, but with those serious fatal impaired crashes not changing, they believe that could have more to do with the people who are the most unsafe on the road while being impaired, feeling as if they are fine and they're special and can, like those most dangerous drivers having a higher confidence in their abilities to drive safely. And really, what we get into with our strategies here, which we'll talk more about, get into not only just reducing whether or not they get in a car, but, dependence on alcohol, like access to, alcohol or, cheap alcohol. And, how do you like kind of work at the culture of it and not just whether you're in the car or not?
So that's reflecting absolute values. Is there a feel for that in the context of population and vehicle growth?
What do you mean?
I mean, is 99 in 2022 a larger percent of the vehicles on the road than 149, 159 was back in 2013?
The data exists to answer that question.
Sure, sure. I mean, I can see it coming from
It's a very
tax office,
complicated way to
registered
look at it.
vehicles, et cetera, et
Yeah, there's
cetera.
not like a easy way to filter that and display it, but ultimately with it being 3%, I would say there's a good chance that yes, it fluctuates. But there's also like nationwide trends versus like local. So like I don't quite have an answer to that question, but
That's
like
fair.
an answer, but an interesting thing, and I haven't quite figured out why, but nationwide, there was an increase in bike and pedestrian injuries and serious injuries and fatalities during pandemic, whereas we saw a drop. So
It's because students were.
Yeah, I was gonna say, all the students weren't going to school.
It was wonderful.
yeah, and you know, and it's not only the students who are involved in these groups, right? And that's something that's been pointed out because I kind of feel the same. You know, I think that the roads being emptier opened up for a lot more of the faster, more aggressive driving, or not even aggressive, but just faster driving to take place, and people got used to that, and you know, they still kind of feel even that's carried through. You see that, why is it taking so long to get through this traffic? You know, for years it's been reduced traffic. So the big takeaway here, though, is that these are really high numbers for a city of our size, and it was statistically what was the term I used earlier? It doesn't matter. It's higher than other communities in Georgia. So where are these crashes occurring? Here we got the red ones are the serious and fatal crashes. The colors represent the ownership of the road. And then we were able to calculate a high injury network. So this shows all the streets. So this shows you where the highest injury crashes are occurring. This is our high injury network. And then this is with the state roads filtered out. So this high injury networks are one of many strategies for local agencies to begin addressing traffic fatalities and serious injuries. So they identify stretches of roadways where the highest concentrations of collisions resulting in various fatal or serious injuries occur. And then allows us to kind of target our approach towards those areas. It's still not, you're not able to necessarily predict where the next crash is going to happen. A lot of our, I think in the last year, a lot of our fatal crashes were more in remote areas of Athens. And the unfortunate thing with that is, yes, there's maybe one thing that you could do in that spot to have prevented that crash, but roads like that exist all over in those areas. So really looking at concentrated areas, the types of roads that are affected by these crashes, and then finding ways to, address the areas that have the highest crash rates, but also how can you implement this in other locations around Athens? Some of these, I know we don't have titles here, but we've got, I'm just going to list off some of the local roads with most severe and fatal crashes: Timothy Road, Epps Bridge Parkway, Barnett Shoals Road, Newton Bridge Road, Athena Drive, Macon Highway, Gaines School Road, Alps Road, West Broad Street, Vincent Drive, Old Lexington Road, and Tallahassee Road. It's not every road that's shown here. The plan itself has a list of, I think, 40 roads maybe, where it really talks about all of them. But one of the great things with the AASHTO software is we can actually pull up a roadway and look at the crashes that have occurred in the last 10 years there and identify patterns. So this is kind of that overarching look, but as we go into future planning on things, where we have this tool that we can use to really factor safety into it. So this is the goals of the Vision Zero resolution. Lofty, but hopefully achievable. And then we explored that crash data that I just covered earlier, sets with the help of GDOT and FHWA. That's Georgia Department of Transportation and Federal Highway Administration. Just realized I hadn't said that before. And then we determined 4 distinct emphasis areas that Athens should focus on to reach our goals. So these are those emphasis areas. And one of the comments that came up was, these numbers seem kind of low. Why not shoot higher? These are our goals in the next 2 years. So, you know, these goals are, you know, our goal is to eliminate by 2032, you know, cut them in half by 2026. So this is just kind of taking that as an incremental approach. So here are the strategies that can go into intersections, ways that you could improve intersections, reduce crashes there. Here is our working group team members for that emphasis area. More to be added if needed. It's not a mayor commission appointed group. This is initial ideas. Distracted driving strategies right here. And these are also the first of many to come. I think each of these working groups will kind of set forth, like, here's the list that we have in the plan, but also here's other strategies. And do y'all have any other strategies that y'all can bring? It's a living document that we can upgrade and change. This is everyone involved in those working groups. Impaired driving strategies. And then the working groups. And then the pedestrian and bicyclist strategies.
Yes, leading pedestrian intervals.
Yeah. And then you guys are on this list.
We're on the other ones too.
Cool, perfect. I just knew that you were on this one. So next week, we'll find out if there's an acceptance of this plan, and we'll get started on those working groups, and then hopefully get some grants in there, and we're already getting started on the safety action plan development. So. Question.
Does the plan include budget from Athens-Clarke County, or is it just say, yeah, go for it and you can apply for grants, or?
Oh, I mean, so the plan has those emphasis area, the goals set forth in the emphasis areas, and then we'll be able to kind of put money towards some of that. So the no right on red in all of downtown, we would have to hire a outside group to implement that because we don't have enough staff to go through and program every single one of those. But we can hire a group to implement the no right on red as well as leading pedestrian interval on those locations and do it in a way that doesn't create gridlock. So that requires a certain amount of money to pay them to do that. And so we could put forth a grant to implement in that way.
And are signs part of the plan? I mean, like I've never seen a don't text and drive sign anywhere other than like once on one of the highways going in.
There's one on Macon.
Yeah. Seems like they should just start
one that
It's not a very good.
it's not a good, no, it's
just
just.
seems like they just distracted me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
You don't see them because you're too busy texting.
I remember there was billboards that's like over, and I never noticed it before, but I noticed it once. It was one of our T-Splosh billboards. And it's the one that you took a picture in front of. Down near Macon Highway, there's a billboard there. Half of it's covered up by a tree.
Right.
And I always thought it would be interesting, like, if you have like, like some sort of image, and then suddenly as you pass it, a pedestrian pops out because they're on the right side of the billboard and you can't see them. And it says like, did you notice me? That kind of thing. Just like that, like there's barriers in the roadway, there's line of sight issues there. You know, we try as hard as we can to eliminate those, but there's also just kind of being zoned into what you're doing. You don't necessarily notice those things. So I think, yeah, there's definitely a public outreach campaign, and the money kind of attributed to that. I think the ones that we kind of highlighted here were identifying the stretches of road with frequent side swipe or runoff road crashes, and installing rumble strips on those. You have to be careful about doing it in residential areas because we don't necessarily want to create a nuisance for those neighbors, but there's other ways that you can also reduce the volume on the outside of the car versus the inside.
Could you go back to the slide that had about transportation, like public transportation options? I want to see what was all, you kind of, it was one of the last ones. It was like the third to last one. Actually, yeah, and I'm kind of curious, you know, this is sort of The article, I guess Art sent about like, it was at night that all the fatalities, occurred, and that's where the increase was. Obviously, a big part of the issue is reducing the amount of large vehicles on the road, I suppose. And I heard, back 5 years ago that once vehicles are autonomous, then, we're gonna just be able to call our vehicle to us and we're not gonna have as many cars on the road, this sort of thing. Is that even part of as we're doing this planning of stuff, is that even part of like how we're reducing the number of vehicles on the road and how, is that even part of conversations anymore? Is that just like?
Not at the local
too much
level,
of a-
but I can go ahead and tell you that, I mean, based on everything I've seen, I don't think we're anywhere near that.
It's not as,
Level.
it's certainly not as close as we thought it was 5 years ago.
No.
Yeah,
It is, I mean, even self-driving cars now, like, there is a new filter in the AASHTO that says this crash was self-driving related. So, and I think I was looking at, I guess it was over the last 10 years, but I think it was like 10 crashes related to it, but you'll see that increase as more of these vehicles get on the road.
Yeah. But so, as far as transit, I mean, how is that part of plan to reduce, because I guess the overall objective would be to also reduce the amount of vehicles that are on the road. Is that?
Well, and so then this one being impaired driving.
For impaired driving,
That's part of, I guess, probably a larger discussion. And I think really that gets into maybe our NTP discussion, right? Like, how do you accommodate a, X amount percentage growth of residents? Like, at some point, as growth continues to happen, you'll have a similar population density to Atlanta. And if you just continue, like, how do we avoid the Atlanta traffic? Here in Athens? Because, if you really think about it, there's a handful of roads here that, accommodate most of that transportation load. And they're also some of the more dangerous ones. And you also just can't keep widening forever.
Is this more about crashes or it's more about the fatalities, right? Like what this is, the Vision Zero or
the impaired driving strategy.
No, I'm talking about like just overall, like the whole presentation is about.
Yeah. It's about really these.
Okay.
Focusing on these emphasis areas based on the crash data that we looked through and analyzed, and finding ways to reduce crashes in these areas so that we're at least on par with other communities in Georgia. But starting with, what are we especially, not good at? What kind of crashes to Athens residents?
So not necessarily crashes that have to do with fatalities, but just crashing.
Right. Ultimately, our Vision Zero goal is really aiming more towards the serious and fatal crashes. But yeah, and a lot of that has to do with just like we're finding out more about who is involved in the crashes. There's an age range, and I can tell you, like, I was kind of surprised that young driver wasn't a higher percentage of our crashes. These things. It's not just students. It's all ages.
So this was just UGA student,
right? I'm sure.
So this was a presentation by TPW to the mayor and commission.
Yes.
Okay. And then, and I'm assuming that the goal, in addition to the overriding goal of keeping them apprised of what you care about, was arguing for funding toward TPW as well as the necessary top-down direction from the mayor and commission to engage other bodies within the Athens-Clarke County government. Am I correct in understanding what was trying to be achieved there?
So, I mean, ultimately, all of these plans, like the most important part with any plan document is it sets forth a vision of how you're going to strategically go about, enacting something. And our mayor and commission have to balance a lot of things and a lot of priorities. And I mean, one that we always hear, especially from the, bike ped side of things, is why are we spending all this money on bike and pedestrian infrastructure when we have failing stormwater pipes? Which is a valid question. And the answer there is usually, we're not spending operational dollars out of our general budget to go towards bike and pedestrian projects. We're spending SPOS dollars, special allocated dollars that are dedicated to that. And, you know, we do have money from the general budget going towards those stormwater issues in addition to the SPOS dollars.
Sure.
But just because we're not working on that one thing doesn't mean it doesn't mean that we can't work on this as well. And so what we were really wanting to just highlight here is safety is an issue on our roadways, and there's a lot of things going on in the county. This is something that really needs a plan, and we need to, get started on collaborating. And when you see these projects coming forward and you see these grant these grant applications coming forward in the future, like now the background of where it's coming from and why. And this will be a history item in all of those future agendas related.
Sure. And I guess where I was actually going with that very briefly, though, was, for example, TPW, even if the mayor and commission said, y'all are wonderful, we love you, can't do anything about Athens-Clarke County Police Department enforcing hands-free laws.
Correct.
Okay. So to that extent, for you to achieve your goals, you actually need buy-in from the mayor and commission on things that are outside your purview. And that's part of the goal of educating them on this sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's why we have those members of the working group, because, really, the plan sets forth goals. We also have strategic planning initiatives that sets forth goals. Like, while it's not our job as DPW to dictate how enforcement should happen, by having this plan approved and PD at the table and direction from mayor and commission that they're, they're accepting this plan, that kind of helps move that momentum. And we're there at the table. If that's something, a really great example is speed enforcement cameras is something that our PD department does not like to use. They just don't like it. It's not effective in their minds. In our minds, it is effective. It's a strategy that can really help. Like, if you know that you can't turn right at this light because you got a $250 ticket the last time you did it, you're probably, even if you can weasel your way out of it by saying, oh, I wasn't driving, or, this is my first one, like contesting it at court or
There's enough of a pain to get the turn, right?
Yeah, it's like, how many times are you gonna go in and do that process before they say, okay, look, you've done this 10 times, you're not gonna get out of this one. But we don't operate and manage those.
Sure. No, I get it. I'm just trying to understand.
Yeah.
The long-term goal vis-a-vis y'all's presentation toward the mayor and commission regarding this, and that makes sense now.
Yeah, and really highlighting that this is not transportation and public works is gonna fix all of these issues. I mean, even when you look at these crashes, there's so many, like, we'll look at the context of the roadway and determine if there was a fault in the road that caused the crash, because that's an important conversation when it comes to insurance coverage and liability.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just to interrupt, I just want to mention real quickly, if Daniel, we can talk offline, but some of those programs, the university did implement a little bit. We have a rideshare partnership with Lyft. It helped us kind of eliminate some of the overnight bus route, but subsidize that with the Lyft, and it doesn't go downtown. It picks you up technically on campus, which I think you can get picked up right at the arch. So it's technically on campus, but it gives students a discounted ride home. I don't have any of the data to support this, but maybe I can connect you with somebody who might. And then we also had a heads up Bulldog program a year or so ago to try to eliminate some of the distracted driving. I kind of targeted some of the areas like coming out of our parking garages, things like that, where a lot of our parking garages, for some reason or another, have pedestrian walkways, directly at the entrance and exits of them. Some of them is the main kind of thoroughfare to building to building. So we kind of targeted those areas to try to eliminate. We just had signage too, just said heads up Bulldog, don't be distracted when you're moving, things like that. But same thing. If want to talk offline about it, might be able to connect you with somebody.
Yeah, I think I'd love to
Many
get
of those.
some input too on those, because this was kind of a first stab at those working groups. And I think that there's some really valuable people at the university that have already started these programs, and maybe these are things that could go out countywide. And what would be required, and what are the common pitfalls and stuff like that.
Maybe, one thing I will add, and then I'm gonna have to close the door on this discussion because we're about out of time, is that with our funds, if you all want to have a media campaign that targets any of these areas or something like that, it is within our purview to have programs like that. So you can be thinking about that for the next fiscal year. I'd love to use that budget for that. So be thinking about that now. Join Education and Communications, which is meeting Thursday at 4 p.m.
Where are we meeting?
I think you're
Downstairs.
downstairs. But if
At
you're,
your new office?
I know.
And this is on consent.
Yes, it is on consent. Yes. So if you have any further questions, because Daniel just kind of quickly went through this. This was a lot here, please.
Could you provide the slides?
And you can see the original presentation online. And thank you, Daniel, for preparing that. I think there's a lot of great stuff there. I'm really heartened by that.
Yep.
And then any other brief updates from corridor committees or AIM committees? And I've already heard from Randy, UGA, Greenway, T-SWAT. Okay. With that, I'll give Daniel back another minute or two. Was there anything from the staff updates that you wanted to make sure that we knew about?
We are applying for the raise grant. It's due tomorrow. I would have asked for some help, but didn't have time. Scraping in there.
That's ironic.
Yeah, it was the kind of thing where it's, we've just been slammed. There's a potential partnership. Atlanta Regional Commission reached out to staff and to see if we could be a partner for an e-bike rebate program.
Yes.
We're working with sustainability to put forth an initiative to get word to Kelly and the other commission members. And basically there's a notice of proposed administrative action, NOPA, as well as some other things that will be distributed. But it's our belief that it would be a good program. What it looks like exactly, I'm not sure. We are not the ones who confirmed to be a coalition city, but basically the Atlanta Regional Commission, made up of 20 counties, their application would open up that rebate program to those 20 counties. And then they're also reaching out to cities to be coalition cities. And so Athens, Savannah, Augusta, the kind of main areas that have a higher rate of bicycle use, and I don't know what the use is there. I know that we were reached out to.
Is there something that we could do to advocate to the mayor and commission to get Kelly to put it on the agenda?
I'm not sure.
I bugged them about e-bike stuff.
Yeah, really at this point, it's we're partnering with sustainability. It's more of a sustainability initiative because it goes towards accomplishing some of their plans, and we're happy to work with them on that. And I know that the grant, ultimately, it's a grant that we would otherwise not be eligible for if we were not a coalition member. And because you have to have a certain plan in place to be eligible, and they have that plan. But that deadline, I believe, is in April. So we're early enough to where we're going through the mayor and commission process to get it done. So I'll let you guys know if there are any updates and if there's anything needed on your part.
If you ever need a vote of support, ask them.
Yeah. So other than that, there's a bunch of other stuff, but we don't need to get into it. And I will highlight that our next meeting, we're going to be talking about Lexington Road projects and Cherokee Road multi-use path. We're going to merge them into like one presentation. So
Okay.
that'll probably be a pretty bulky chunk, but just, y'all requested at the last meeting to have some options for Cherokee Road, so went back to the consultant, we're getting, some phasing options thrown out there and the different costs for those different phases. And also we can talk about funding mechanisms and, prioritization, all this sort of fun stuff.
So Derek's.
Yeah, Derek Doster, as well as,
Y'all get paid.
our consultant, from, I believe, Arcata.
Great. Okay, well, it is 6:01, so with that, I will entertain a motion to end our meeting.
To adjourn.
Okay, second, favor.
Feature in.
I'm opposed.
Teresa.
Talking. Okay, I think that's unanimous. Y'all get home safe. Thank you.
That's a great fit.
Yeah, these are nice.